Now 7 p.m. and I'm reconvening to open session and calling to order the regular Board of Education meeting for Indian Prairie School District 204 on Monday, January 12th, 2026. Michelle, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Grover.
Here.
Mr. Rising.
Here.
Ms. Deming. Present. Mr. Carubas.
Here.
Ms. Gentz.
Here.
Ms. Donahue.
Here.
And Ms. Fosdick.
Here.
We have a quorum. Ms. Fosdick, will you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next regular board meeting will be held on Monday, January 26th. We have one board salute tonight, Mr. Rising.
Sorry, wasn't ready to go. District 204 students earn Microsoft User Specialist certification. The board salutes Metea Valley High School Business Department for the success of 42 students who earned their Microsoft User Specialist certification and Microsoft Excel during the first semester. This industry-recognized certification helps students build real-world workplace skills and prepares them for future success. Congratulations to the students and business department for their achievements.
Let's have an applause for that accomplishment. All right, next up is our student representative report by Soha Panchal from Metea Valley High School.
Good evening, everyone. As you know, my name is Soha Panchal, and I am the Executive Board Representative from Metea Valley High School. And as always, it is an honor for me to be here with you all today. First, I would like to start off with our general updates. We look forward to hosting our incoming freshman class of 2030 on Wednesday evening for 8th grade open house. We hosted our annual elective fair last week. Our speech team has been having another amazing season this year as well, and we're also hosting our sectionals at MV this season. Now, sadly, we start interviews on Friday, seeking the replacement of Mr. DeBrucker as our principal as he is transitioning to Crystal Lake South in July. Now, for our very short athletics part, we hosted our annual Special Olympics versus steps, and the Bears won against the Packers. Now for our fine arts. Congratulations to our MV All-State musicians who will be traveling to Peoria at the end of January to perform in the Illinois Music Educator Conference All-State Choir, Orchestra, Band, and Vocal Jazz Ensembles. Now, collage was outstanding this year, as always. And lastly, Orchesis is almost ready for their season showcase at the end of the month, and we're working very hard on our dances, including their partner student dance and their parent dance. Now, that's a wrap for our report this evening. Thank you all for your time, and I look forward to updating you all on the great things at Metea Valley in the future. Go Mustangs.
Thank you. Okay, next is our school spotlight, and tonight it is Fischer Middle School. We have Kevin Schnabel, Courtney DeFore, and Chris Melvo.
All right, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity tonight. We're going to start with what we started with 3 years ago when the three of us got there, and that was the basics of school culture and school identity. And at Fischer, we call that Falcon Pride. And when we first got there, we listened to our leadership team and asked them, you know, what do students and staff need, and what is the school that we want and kids and teachers and families deserve. We also incorporated our 4 feeders. So by that I mean the elementary schools that come our way, each of them, we incorporated one of their B statements as well. So what we mean by Falcon Pride at Fischer is our 4 B statements or core values. Be safe, be kind, be ready, and be one. And that is our foundational base. And I'm going to pass the baton to our assistant principals to talk about one of the key strategies in which we use to achieve Falcon Pride.
So restorative practices are essential at Fisher Middle School for creating a safe, respectful, and inclusive learning and community for all of our students so that they feel heard and valued. By focusing on relationships, accountability, and growth, these practices allow for our students to take accountability, learn from their mistakes, repair the harm, and then develop those really important and essential skills of empathy and problem solving. And so restorative practices also strengthen that relationship, that trust between our staff and our students, and reduce our repeat behaviors, as well as support that and strengthen our climate and our culture that we have on belonging, which is our theme at Fisher this year. And when students belong, they thrive, and when they thrive, they succeed, and that's what we want for our students at Fisher. So, like Mr. Schnabel shared, 3 years ago, we joined forces over at Fisher together, learned, observed, interacted with our students, our staff, and our community. And one of the takeaways was restorative practices. And so we knew that was important, and that was something that we needed to prioritize. And so what we're going to share with you today is just our 3-year timeline so far, when we started to where we are and where we hope to be with restorative practices. Okay. Oh, geez. So our first year together, 23-24, we really made a point to learn and understand what restorative practices are. At the time, we had 3 social emotional coaches who really kind of took the lead on restorative practices and gave us the opportunity to kind of witness them in action, and that kind of helped prompt us a little bit on how we can continue to incorporate restorative practices even at the admin level. Classroom implementation of restorative practices in partnership with teachers who also experienced and became more comfortable with those practices as well. As we ventured into 2024, 2025, we continued that professional development at our Institute Days and at our school improvements on restorative practices, this time increasing modeling and hands-on experiences so that our students could hear, or not our students, but our teachers could hear and see what those look like. Administration also continued to utilize that as part of our exclusionary process. So as students return from exclusionary, that is part of their return with their permission as well as with their parents. Classroom implementation of restorative practices in collaboration with teachers who are definitely experienced and confident in this area. And then we also have an amazing equity ambassador and restorative practices trainer, one of 15 in the district, Gigi Trzynski, and she's really kind of taken the lead on restorative practices at Fisher, and we are truly grateful for the work and the leadership that she has provided Fisher and the staff there.
Okay, so year 3, sorry, my apologies. This is year 3 as admin team and year 3 of us in our restorative practices journey. And so when we look at this current year, again, when we first started, we had 3 SEL coaches. Now we have 0. However, through the work of the equity team and Fisher, we are able to use Trzynski to actually train some of our teachers to become restorative gurus, essentially. And so we have a restorative team where they had those restorative conversations. And so again, we were able to utilize our student support to leverage that. Again, yes, we decreased from 3 SEL coaches to 0. We were able to counter that by now we're training our staff to have those conversations. So again, leveraging those relationships, and again, we want to make sure that our teachers know how to have these conversations. We are still using, we're intentional with designing professional development centered around restorative practice. Like today, we had a SIP day. We carved out 40 minutes to continue these discussions, right? Again, we don't want, we want to continue the momentum that we built since our first year. And so we want to address all stakeholders, students, staff, and also parents as well. We kind of have a Fisher Parent University where we had a discussion over restorative practices. So again, how can we make sure that we address all key stakeholders, because restorative practice is important, and we want to make sure that we increase that awareness with everyone. And then going into 26, 27, and beyond, just continuing to have those professional development discussions and make sure that we are implementing everything with fidelity. So again, we are starting with that big momentum from year 1 to year 2 to year 3. So just being consistent and providing resources for everyone to be successful.
So in summary, what we're most proud of besides the students, staff, and families at Fisher is Falcon Pride. And now we're connecting the dots with restorative practices, and it's all about trusting relationships between students and staff, teachable moments, upon reflection, emphasizing reflection, and student accountability and student growth. And of course, as Courtney mentioned, the theme of this year, all this ties right into creating a sense of belonging.
Thank you so much. Our board, a year or so ago, all went through restorative practices to understand more about what that was about and how helpful and powerful that can be with different techniques, especially when someone re-enters back into the school. So thank you for that and for this theme of belonging that is so critical and needed with all of our students. So thank you so much for all your work.
Thank you.
Okay, we now move to our consent agenda. We have no public comment tonight. We move to our consent agenda. What?
The superintendent report?
Oh, consent agenda and superintendent report. And we will start with our superintendent report. He was very anxious to give his report.
Ms. Donahue, members of the Board of Education, Indian Prairie community, hope all of you had a wonderful holiday season, and 2026 has started off in a positive, beneficial way for you. District 204 is collaborating with Naperville 203, Oswego District 308, and East Aurora District 131 to hold our 4th annual Mental Health and Wellness Symposium on March 7th from 8:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Metea Valley High School. A keynote session will be co-presented by Dr. John Duffy, author of Rescuing Our Sons, and Ms. Kathy Kasani Adams, author of Restoring Our Girls. This year, for the very first time, we will have a student keynote presented by Eddie Slowakowski. The symposium will again include breakout sessions for adults and middle school and high school students, a community resource fair, and a book fair. Complimentary lunch will be provided for all attendees. Childcare will be provided at no charge for children ages 3 to 10. Registration will open next week. We have seen increasing interest in our symposium. The first year we had approximately 120 participants. Last year we had approximately 600 participants. We look forward to seeing you at the event. I'm happy to announce that IPEF, in support of the robotics program, recently received a grant from International Motors, which is headquartered in Lisle, for $28,180. It is potentially renewable for 2 more years. This is to support new teams at the 5 elementary schools that currently have no robotics clubs: May Watts, Brooks, Steck, Graham, and Patterson. IPF also received a $9,000 Quality of Life grant from the City of Aurora to support our Kids Essential Fund. So we're very happy about those 2 grants IPF received. And those are my comments for tonight. Ms. Donahue, I'll now turn it back over to you.
Okay, I now need a motion for approval of consent agenda items D through L.
I move that the Board of Education approve consent agenda items D through L as presented.
A second?
Is there any discussion? Okay, Michelle, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Gins,
Yes.
Ms. Fosdick,
Yes.
Ms. Donahue,
Yes.
Ms. Grover,
Yes.
Mr. Carubus,
Yes.
Ms. Deming, and Mr. Rising.
Yes.
The motion passes. Next up, I need a motion to approve the adoption of the proposed new textbook for the high school business law course.
I move that the Board of Education approve the adoption of the proposed new textbook for the high school business law course as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, Michelle, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Gentz?
Yes.
Mr. Rising?
Yes.
Ms. Grover?
Yes.
Ms. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Carubus?
Yes.
Ms. Demme? And Ms. Fosdick.
Yes.
The motion passes. I need a motion now to approve the adoption and implementation of the middle school Project Lead the Way Gateway Course Flight in Space to expand student access to high-quality STEM education and prepare them for future career pathways.
I move that the board approve the middle school Project Lead the Way flight, middle school Project Lead the Way flight in space as presented.
A second?
Any discussion? Okay, Michelle, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Demme?
Aye.
Ms. Fosdick?
Yes.
Mr. Rising?
Yes.
Ms. Gentz?
Yes.
Mr. Carubus?
Yes.
Ms. Donahue?
Yes.
And Ms. Grover.
Yes.
The motion passes. I now need a motion to approve the addition of the new 7th grade exploratory course Design and Discovery as part of our strategic initiative to enhance innovation, project-based learning opportunities at the middle school level.
I move that the board approve the middle school design and discovery course.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, Michelle, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Grover?
Yes.
Mr. Rising?
Yes.
Ms. Gentz?
Yes.
Ms. Donahue?
Yes.
Ms. Fosdick?
Yes.
Mr. Carubus?
Yes.
And Ms. Demme.
Aye.
The motion passes. Okay, we now will have our presentation from Dr. Barbie Chisholm, Ms. Christy Diamond, Ms. Shannon Grievous, about middle school social studies curriculum.
Thank you, board members, and thank you, Christy and Shannon, for dedicating your time this evening to present the work that our committee has been doing for the board's consideration. So the purpose of our presentation today is two parts: to discuss our curriculum revision and proposed resource adoption, and to provide information on those proposals for the 26-27 school year. This is in alignment with our board policies on curriculum development and resource adoption. Primary alignment of this work is Priority 1, Objective 2, providing all students with high-quality curriculum and instruction to meet or exceed standards. Also, our work is aligned to Priority 1, Objective 1, and Priority 2, Objective 2, relating to providing students equitable experiences and creating professional development opportunities for our staff. This slide just reviews our general process for course updates. So we prioritize courses within the district curriculum and instruction team and work with building leadership, our teacher leaders on the curriculum teams. During our work, our main priorities are aligning with state standards and mandates, ensuring that we're aligned with evidence-based practices, alignment both across schools and between levels, student achievement outcomes, and also alignment to the Board of Education goals, our strategic plan, equity plan, and of course, our portrait of a graduate framework. This is a visual, a big picture of what it looks like, and I'll speak a little bit more about how this process came to be during the revision process. In general, we begin with a needs assessment, design and develop our plan for moving forward, pilot and implement, and then review our work to decide, what adjustments are needed. And I promise I won't talk the whole time. You'll get to hear from them. So this timeline just lays out how this work has unfolded for the social studies revision for middle school. We began all the way back in the spring of 2024 with our needs assessment, and our work has continued and brought us to where we are today. With our, we did our needs assessment, and then we did a lot of work last year establishing our criteria, developing our scope and sequence, and identifying a resource for pilot that we've been piloting in the fall. We are presenting that work today with the idea that we are going to be able to provide additional professional development at our Countywide Institute Day in February, and to be able to continue developing teacher capacity with being ready for full launch in the fall. So the needs assessment was the first step in this process. And the needs assessment encompasses a lot of different pieces. When I first started, one of the first conversations that I had with a teacher was about social studies and some of the challenges that they found working with our existing social studies curriculum. So during my time as I visited classrooms, spoke with teachers and administrators, I wanted to learn a little bit more about where those challenges came from and how that might inform our work moving forward. So one of the major challenges with social studies at the middle school level, it is related to our middle school teaming structure. Our teaming provides a lot of, is student-centered and is appropriate for the middle school model, but it does create social studies as our swing course. So for many of our teachers, social studies is not their primary area of expertise, it is a secondary area of expertise. And so a lot of our teachers were asking for more resources to help support them in teaching social studies effectively. Our most recent curriculum adoption did not include a core resource, and that was something that many of our teachers felt were lacking and didn't feel supported as they were working through that. And so that was one of the main priorities that drove us through the work. So then we did a survey of both teachers and students to identify what are the components of our curriculum that are really working right now that we want to make sure that we hold as part of our process, as well as our opportunities for moving forward. So the big pieces that came out from both our teachers and our students is that our students found a lot of the learning relevant, and we want to make sure that we keep that so they see themselves in their social studies learning. We also have a balance between both more local United States and global studies, so we wanted to maintain that. Our existing curriculum was very inquiry focused and provided a lot of flexibility for teachers to adapt to meet individual student needs. So we want to make sure that we maintain those pieces, and then we're also listening to the needs and the opportunities for change. So as I mentioned earlier, a lot of teachers were asking for additional resources to help support them. So when they're making modifications and adjustments, they're not doing so in a vacuum. There's a lot of resources to draw from to move forward. Teachers were also looking for more interactive, discussion-based activities to help increase student engagement. They're also looking for more knowledge building to support the inquiry process. So our existing curriculum is very inquiry forward, but what we wanted more of is more of that base of knowledge to make that inquiry meaningful for our students. We are also looking for greater cohesion and alignment and a need for clearer objectives and outcomes. So our big themes is having more of a balance between inquiry and knowledge building. And that is in alignment with our high school, so then if we can strengthen our students' foundation of knowledge, it helps support them in a deeper level of inquiry when they reach the high school. So from the needs assessment, the next work was to go through our scope and sequence and identify where we want to go. So ISB provides a lot of flexibility in middle school social studies of identifying specific courses and focus areas. However, as you are aware, there are also a lot of instructional mandates related to social studies, and so we are looking to try to make sure we can address all of those in a way that makes sense. So we are proposing a new scope and sequence shift in which in 6th grade we'll be focusing on world geography and culture, and then 7th grade will focus on early U.S. history, and 8th grade later U.S. history. And I'll talk a little bit more about the rationale and what those are going to look like. So one of the big takeaways, the team spent a lot of time analyzing the mandates and the instructional standards. I think we dedicated a day and a half to this, just full day, just digging in, mapping out different options. And One of the big needs is a need for more U.S. history driven by the instructional mandates. Almost all of our instructional mandates in our existing curriculum are being met in 8th grade, which makes it difficult for our 8th graders to have a cohesive learning experience. And I included a couple of the mandates, where, the teaching of history shall include the study of the role and contributions of African Americans and other ethnic groups, including, and then I'm not going to read them all for you, but you could see how the state identifies all of these different groups to be included in the study of U.S. history, and so we want to make sure that we are able to address those meaningfully. So our proposed revision does distribute these among 7th and 8th grade. And so 7th and 8th grade will address the majority of the mandates, and then 6th grade will provide more of that global perspective. One of the big challenges was to decide what to do with ancient history, as was our previous focus of 6th grade. We discussed a lot of different possible models, and we mapped the standards and mandates through them. And we arrived at the conclusion that world geography is a better fit for our student needs and aligning to the instructional pieces. So the world geography will include both the study of cultures in the context of geography and the historical context as well. So we are not completely losing that world history piece of it, but it is more expansive. And this will help provide a foundational background for our students as they're transitioning into 9th grade for human geography. And so we wanted to also, one of the other factors was to have a middle school course that isn't strictly focused on history, because social studies encompasses more than history, and our learning standards are history, geography, economics, civics, as well as inquiry standards, and we felt that by providing a geography course at 6th grade would help us address those better. So within our shifts, our 6th grade, the focus is on world geography and culture, but we also have the opportunity to embed world history and economics within that. 7th grade, early U.S. history has a natural partnership to civics in the founding of our country, and economics, and 8th grade with later U.S. history also has embedded civics and economics. So this is not a typical pathway by many districts. However, I'm confident in the work of the team and that this is the right path for Indian Prairie, for our teachers and our students. So from this, so we determined our scope and sequence, and then we wanted to make sure that we identified a resource that allowed us to do more of this embedded work instead of isolated history, but how do we embed civics? How do we embed economics? When we study geography, how do we embed history and culture and economics as well? And so that was what we were looking for in our resource. We identified a core resource for pilot, TCI, which is currently our K-5 social studies resource. They're using it in the elementary schools. And our needs assessment really drove the interest of our teachers. So we selected TCI because it does provide a balance of that inquiry and knowledge building. There are also a wealth of resources within it to help support engaging learning, and it did provide that integration of civics and economics and history for our geography. Initially, I was hoping to get about 45 teachers for the pilot. I had 138 social studies teachers and 3 of our multilingual teachers sign on for the pilot. It seemed that once people heard about it, they were eager to get started. And I'm sure they can, teachers can speak a little bit to the interest of that. And it was really hard for me to say no, because this told me that this was really meeting a need for our teachers. And so we were able to expand the pilot to really just get our hands in and start to figure it out. So we did include standard PA courses and some of our multilingual courses as well in the pilot. Throughout the fall, we've had ongoing professional development with a launch at Institute Day, and then during our district PD Wednesdays, we are providing time for teachers to collaborate and work through some of the challenges inherent within a pilot. So the TCI resource, there are 3 titles. 6th grade is Geography Alive, 7th grade is History Alive, the United States Through Industrialism, and 8th grade with the United States Through Modern Times. 6th grade is piloting 3 units. We have the Foundational Geographers World Unit, Canada and the United States, and Latin America, and then from there, the other units travel around the world. This is a great way to kind of start out the year, starting with where we are now and then how do we expand our lens. 7th grade starts with the foundations of history, America before and after the Revolution, and getting into revolution in the colonies. With our 8th grade, focusing on the forming a new nation, and then kind of skipping ahead a little bit to the Union Challenge, which is the precursor to the Civil War. There are some extra, because with the shift of the scope and sequence, we had to create some additional units for 8th grade to make sure that our students were prepared in the pilot. Our PA courses have the same scope and sequence, and the TCI resource has additional enrichment inquiry already built in it to provide some additional support for our PA teachers. So we started the pilot in the fall, and then at the beginning of December, we've been doing some more informal check-ins, but we did a formal survey of both our students and our teachers, and I'm going to let them tell a little bit about the feedback and some of the findings.
Sure. I'm Christy Diamond. I teach 8th grade social studies, PA social studies, currently at Fischer Middle School. And so I had the benefit of seeing my colleagues prior to this presentation. And this is my 3rd year in district with this building and 1st year with this curriculum. So by comparison, I'm really seeing the cohesion and chronological structure as a benefit to our students. Inquiry, of course, with PA students is a benefit, and that's not something that we're losing with this new curriculum, but we are able to enhance with the background building that we are giving our students through this curriculum. It's truly much more robust, giving them a timelined experience of American history rather than a thematic view. We found that our students don't have enough historical knowledge that they are bringing into the classroom, either from their own learning or connection to prior learning experiences, to have those inquiry discussions yet. However, after completing a TCI unit and building that background and evaluating some of these key themes, like equity and fairness, and looking at, I would say, our political foundations, they're able to start building those connections and bridges that we want to see them bring as they become high school students. So I feel that that cohesion has really been a strength. And then for our students that are still navigating what that chronological structure looks like, this is something that's really new to them. And so we've seen the textbook be a benefit because they can always go back and re-access that material, re-access, review content. There are video lessons, there's text lessons, so there are multimodal ways that they can access a lesson either in the classroom or outside of the classroom to attend to their own learning. And we've felt that that's a benefit as well, especially when students do need that relearning moment. So I think that that has not only helped teachers build a more cohesive curriculum this year, but has helped students find their place in history and start piecing some of these things that are mentioned in their world all the time and start bringing them together in a more meaningful way.
Hi, I'm Shannon Grievous, and I teach 6th grade social studies and ELA, as well as PA social studies at Still Middle School. This is my 5th year in the district, 4th year at Still, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how the students have reacted to this new pilot. They since a lot of my students have had TCI in elementary school, it seemed to be a very smooth and seamless transition going from 5th grade to 6th grade, at least most of the students, if they remembered what they did last year. And so that allowed me to introduce the new curriculum at ease, and allowed me to just jump right on into the curriculum instead of teaching the students to learn the platform and learn the book in itself. So the students were very excited about that, and they were very excited to be part of this pilot and something new that they were gaining this brand new knowledge about. Some of the outcomes that we got from the surveys that we had administered to our students came from different backgrounds depending on where they were coming from 6th and 7th and 8th grade. As you can see on your slide, some of the 8th graders were excited that they were able to engage in more different role-playing activities and bringing out more information with using their textbooks and using their online versions, piecing it all together because it's all one big unit, instead of just having a curriculum that might have been in different bits and pieces from before. So as one student said, when we had the Constitutional Convention in class and we had all of our roles to act out, it was really fun playing a character, and I learned about all the difficulties these people went through. So they had a real life experience and feeling about that. So it drove that personal connection to the historical people and connections to historical past in real life. Some of the 6th graders and perhaps some of the 7th graders talked about the indigenous peoples, because not just the 6th grade classes, but the 7th grade classes also talk about indigenous peoples and indigenous groups at the same time. And so that connection between the grade levels as well gives that deeper connections when they go from one grade level to another grade level too. So another feedback was that they learned about the different indigenous groups, and it was very informational. That also remains home to being a student here at Indian Prairie School District. And in my classroom, I make sure that, hey, this is part of where you're at. This is part of our foundation in our school district. Another student feedback was the class discussions, and they loved those class discussions and the review that they have, because they can use that with talking with their peers and talking with their teachers, and they can see that evidence in the book, and they can see that evidence online, and that allowed them to retain that knowledge that they gain. And then the final piece that we have found for student evidence was that their lessons in the videos, which there are a lot of material in TCI, help them learn a lot better because they're very engaging lessons, and they also let them experience real life visuals that they might not be able to see. You might have students that haven't been outside of Illinois, but they've seen videos of Arizona, they've seen pictures of Hawaii, and they may have never seen that before again. So our students are extremely excited about this, these books and this resource and our curriculum that we have provided for them in the short couple months that we have shown them, and they have shown that they are really receptive of this curriculum so far.
So our recommendation is to move forward with our curriculum revision. And these would be the recommended social studies units, 6th grade with a focus on geography. It would include the 3 pilot units, and then move into Europe and Russia, Africa, Southwest and Central Asia, Monsoon Asia, and then Oceania and Antarctica, with world history embedded within all of those units. 7th grade, moving forward with U.S. History 1, with the 3 pilot units, and then moving into the formation of a new nation, the launch of a new republic, and an expanding nation. Our 8th grade for U.S. History 2 would focus on the expanding nation, America in the mid-1800s, which we did not have an opportunity to pilot as we're working on, creating a more cohesive historical sequence for our students. But then moving into the Union Challenge with the Civil War, migration to industry, the emergence of a modern nation, and World War II, and moving into modern America. We are also proposing shifting, right now financial literacy is part of the 7th grade curriculum, and that would shift as a standalone unit into the 8th grade curriculum, where our students are perhaps more ready to think about being financially literate. And this allows our 7th and 8th grade to address the majority of the instructional mandates, while 6th grade provides that relevant and within the context of history, more expansive than even our ancient history previously did. Our PA and our Project Arrow and our multilingual social studies would follow the same units and be able to leverage the supports within TCI to be a better fit for those courses. Our recommended resources are the ones that I shared earlier through Teachers Curriculum Institute, TCI. We would be purchasing a 6-year digital license as well as print student textbooks and teachers editions, and the total cost for 6 years would be $650,000. So next steps is that I request that all the course curriculum changes be open for comment until the next Board of Education meeting. At that time, I request approval of curriculum changes for middle school social studies courses, 6th through 8th grade, at the January 26th Board of Education meeting. The resources presented will be available for review here at the CEC, and request approval of the proposed resources at that meeting as well. Pending approval, we will continue our ongoing professional development and collaboration, including professional development at the February Institute Day. So thank you. And if there are any questions for either.
All right, thank you. We'll start with maybe Ms. Guntz. Do you have any questions?
I had one, but I do want to start by thanking you guys so much, honestly, for the clear thought that's been put into all of this and the care and the time. And obviously hearing that staff felt like they weren't necessarily being heard, none of us want to hear that, so thank you for taking that and running with it, really, to turn into this. The only question I had was, I know you mentioned that no school districts in the area are doing something similar, but have you seen examples of it in other school districts where you've seen it fully implemented, and get maybe an idea of beyond, our pilot program?
Prior to my experience in this district, I spent 9 years in Plainfield, and we had a similar curriculum map in terms of our scope and sequence at each grade level. 6th grade was a blend of world history and ancient civilizations, and that was I would say more on teacher discretion. The framework was the world geography, and teachers added in those ancient civilization activities per the interest of their students. 7th grade took on the first component of U.S. history, and then 8th grade took on the second component. So I had the fortunate experience of bringing that into the beginning of this pilot. And then I believe we also looked at the work of District 203 and neighboring school districts that had maybe not exactly the same 6th grade curriculum, but comparable 7th and 8th grade curriculums, again, to address those standards.
Perfect. No, thank you so much. And honestly, all of this is, I think, very exciting, and for anyone that has students in the district or can see really the benefit of human geography is not an easy class freshman year, that's for sure. So I can see already how they're getting really prepared for it in middle school. So thank you again for everything that you guys have done.
Ms. Grover?
Hi. I echo Ms. Gent's, appreciation for you guys talking to the teachers, talking to the students, what works, and putting the time and effort you put into this curriculum. My question is, I was looking at what you mentioned you currently have, which is grade 6 world history, grade 7 is geography and global studies, and then grade 8 is U.S. history. And I'm aligning it with high school, because in high school you can choose world history, there's human geography, social study, then there's social issues, and then of course U.S. history. My question is, U.S. history in high school is 1 year, and then 1 year is world geography, and then 1 year is world history. And in this discussion or this proposal, it's 2 years of U.S. history and only 1 year given to like world culture. And can you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and I think that was a challenging conversation. We looked at a lot of different models. It was really hard to say that we have a lot of belief in, we want to make sure that we're not just thinking about U.S. history, because social studies is more than just what happens in the United States. However, when we were looking at different models, our students in middle school don't have enough foundational knowledge of U.S. history to be able to engage in those inquiry without that strong foundation. And so that is why we looked at the instructional mandates, and in order to really address all of those, it truly does take 2 years to do so meaningfully. We could choose to check boxes and say, yes, we talked about this group today, we talked about this group tomorrow, we did everything, but we wanted to make it meaningful and purposeful for our students. And so that's why we decided that the 2 years would be a better foundation. And then once they get into high school, they can really take that foundation and then dive more fully into the inquiry-led instruction that happens there.
Great. I really appreciate that. Thank you for that answer. Thanks.
Yeah.
Oh, I would say in adding to your answer as well, in the 7th grade curriculum, because the Constitution and those founding documents are such a large component of that history, that's really built in as, I would say, almost a quarter or more of civics. So in terms of the U.S. history, looking at it from a year's lens is really probably less accurate. It's more of, I would say, a semester or a semester and a few weeks of U.S. history, and then a significant portion of government and politics and building that foundation within the document and the government structure and how the government works. So that way then 8th grade can take that foundation and analyze it and how people interact within the Constitution and how the marginalized groups and all of the groups that we have been asked to focus on as part of these mandates, how they interact within our constitutional system and find their place in the United States as well. So I would say that is our then tie-in to civics as a portion of 8th grade. So we're probably hitting a full year of true U.S. history, but then diving into, again, an additional year of government studies as well.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Karubas?
Great work. I'm glad we're updating this. Slide 16. This is really just a comment because I fully trust your work and where we're heading. I found it interesting that the 6th grade geography is divided in both countries sometimes, by continents sometimes, by culture with the Latin America, and then by climate with the monsoon Asia. I was not familiar with that term, so that was educational for me, but I trust that there's rhyme and reason to why you're doing that, to make it as efficient as possible, but I'm glad that that we're doing it that way. It was very interesting to me. So thanks. The other component, and this is really for administration, and this is page 18, is that, and I didn't ask this before the meeting, so I'd like maybe a response afterwards, is kind of what's our communication plan when we do curriculum changes or resource adoptions. So not everybody watches the board meetings or comes to the board meetings. Right. So how do we inform our community, students, parents, that we're making this change and that the resources will be available? That's it. Thanks.
Ms. Deming.
Thank you so much. And I did not ask this particular question beforehand, a little bit on Board Member Karubas. Can you remind me, how often do we look at curriculum at the middle school level?
So the review cycle is typically 5 years. I will say social studies, based on the needs assessment, social studies was moved up a year, and some other projects were shifted to make room for it.
I think this was, hats off, because I think this makes sense in light of what's been done at the elementary school level, just to, not too relatively long ago, that it makes so much sense to take a look from a social studies standpoint for the middle school level. Since you had so many people that wanted to volunteer, so many teachers, how did they work this? Were they doing sort of dual with what they're using now? How did it, can you share a little bit about how the process worked?
Yeah, so again, as I mentioned, there was a lot of interest. My initial plan was to pilot with our curriculum team with maybe a teaching partner. But again, when you go back to the middle school structure, a lot of even our curriculum team, the individuals most passionate about social studies, many of them only teach one social studies. And so in order to really have that collaboration, you need to make a pilot successful. They were able to work together in teams to pilot the curriculum. So they did pilot this curriculum and did not use our existing curriculum for the beginning of the school year.
Okay. So the process, how do we ensure, do we have to get approval from the state? And again, I didn't ask this, so this may be more of an administrative question, but do we need approval from the state to ensure that we're meeting the standards and the benchmarks that the state sets when we're implementing new curriculum? How do we ensure that that happens?
So in terms of social studies at middle school, there's flexibility within, with the course design. We are audited we participated in an audit of our curriculum last year to ensure that we were addressing all of the standards and instructional mandates. So I'm not sure of the exact cycle of the audit, but I do know that that's part of the process.
Okay, perfect. And then slide 17, we mentioned textbooks, print textbooks. Is that, can you share, are we going to bring in physical textbooks? Will each student has a physical textbook as well, or
yes,
and then access digitally?
Yes. So one of the big pieces of feedback that we're finding at the middle school level is we do really need that blend of digital and print. Sometimes print is the way to go, and sometimes digital, we need that dynamic, but sometimes our middle school students need a screen break and they need to read from a page and write on a piece of paper. So that was something that was really important. I did look at the possibility of doing class sets of student textbooks instead of one-to-one. However, because of our middle school schedule and having a lot of single social studies courses, it really didn't make that much sense, and there's a strong possibility that I would have to be going back to TCI to buy additional textbooks at a not as a discounted rate, so.
I really, I
Yeah.
love the idea of that,
Teachers are
one-to-one
very
for.
excited about it.
We are.
We are
Very
very
excited.
excited about
Yes.
having a print resource.
You mean not just giving them digital access? Oh, my goodness.
We love the option, but we love a print resource.
Sure. Thank you. I think this is great work, and it's really nice to hear some of the student reaction to some of the things
Yeah.
that have already, for those that have already had a chance to trial it. So thank you.
I loved the student quote talking about the Constitutional Convention. I don't remember the last time I heard a middle schooler excited to learn about the Constitutional Convention, so.
Ms. Bosdick.
I'm going to start by saying anytime you say Constitutional Convention, all I can hear is the Hamilton lyric. In the back of my head, it's just playing constantly. Thank you, obviously, for all the work on this, and it sounds like the teachers were really ready for a change, which is great. I have two questions that I don't need an answer on right now, but my first is, were there any vertical discussions with high school teachers about what they were seeing that students need to come into high school better prepared to do in social studies work, especially that first year, right? Because the only option first year is human geography, right? So they're getting two hard-hitting years of U.S. history, and then they're going back to essentially kind of more of what they learned in sixth grade, right? That, at least that focus. So what kind of conversations have you had about that?
So pretty early on in this process, I met with our high school department chairs to start to have some of those pieces. We want to make sure that what we're doing makes sense, you know, as students progress through Indian Prairie. So they've been great thought partners and helped guide the work with that. And then it's also been great to collaborate with and to see some of the way, you know, some of the projects that they're doing. It's also informing some of the work that they're doing at the high school level. And so now they know, you know, our students are going to be coming in with a different level of history. So what can we do with that? You know, how can we push it even further? So yes, we did have some opportunities to collaborate as part of the process.
Great.
So it's been good.
Thank you. Is there any concern? I realize it sounds kind of silly, and it probably is irrelevant given the state standards that we have to meet, of students being a little oversaturated by U.S. history and the interest level at this point, because when they get to high school, right, they know they're going to have had these 2 good full years of U.S. history and civics and government, and then like, oh, we got another required U.S. history year. Like, we got a lot going on.
Yeah.
Not to say there's not plenty of material for us to learn and dig deeper into, but has there been any concern about that, or is that just a...
Yeah, we definitely had
Okay.
those conversations, both, you know, within the middle school.
It got
team
very
and-
heated in
Okay.
our
Oh.
team discussions. But I think also I teach 2 sections of language arts and a section of social studies, and I think one of the things that we forget in looking at individual curriculums is that our students are seeing content throughout the day, and that in order to attend to a majority of our ELA curriculum, they also need to have a foundational knowledge of history. So 7th grade just read Brown Girl Dreaming in ELA, but they haven't had a background of segregation yet. So we're still missing some significant components of history to help them attend to ELA that we need to kind of also acknowledge their whole picture of, yes, it is a lot of history, but they're seeing history in different places. And if they're not seeing history in their social media feeds, and they're not seeing they're not seeing history in their home discussions, or they're not seeing history in a historical fiction novel that they pick up in the LMC, then we are their access point. So we need to make sure that they're getting a great source, quality information at their access point. And if they get it more than once, then they're getting it more than once, but they're at least getting it.
Okay.
And I will also say some of those concerns that came out, and they were really great conversations, like you described them here. They were really great professional dialogues for passionate educators and trying to reach consensus on this. And that was part of what drove us to this specific resource, is because we wanted to make sure we're not just delivering history. We're not just marching through time. It's, you know, where's the context? Where's the inquiry, the essential questions, and embedding the civics and economics to really make it not just, this is the timeline, these are the dates, these are the people, let's assess and move on, make sure you remember the next group of people and timelines, but that it really is a story, and that's what we're studying.
Well, thank you for that additional background info, because we get the finished product, but we're not part of those conversations, so I really appreciate you being able to share that. My last question just came to me during this presentation, basically just because of how slide 16 looks, where 7th grade is U.S. History 1 and 8th grade is U.S. History 2. There's been no conversation or possibility of this being a high school credit situation like it would be for language, because it's not the same course.
It is not
correct?
the same
Okay,
course,
I just want to
correct.
clarify that, because I know we've had that with language coming up. Actually, the 7th grade class or next 7th grade class, that will start that potential
World language.
world
is the
language, yes. So I
current
just
eighth
want to make
grade.
sure it's not the same course, so that's not
Not the same
relevant.
course,
Okay,
correct.
thank you very much.
Mr. Rising.
You can keep it on the 16, because I'm eventually going to
That's
ask you a
fair,
question.
it's
Thank you, by the way, and please express our thanks to all the 138 teachers that wanted to give their input. It's my knowledge that the last time they really set the learning standards for middle school social studies was like 2016, 2017, right? Is that about right? I mean, they've updated it with financial
Right.
literacy stuff, but those standards are still from like 16, 17 that they've constantly tweaked a little
Yes,
bit here and
yeah,
there.
they're
Okay.
continuing. Yes.
So what I would say to, I know Ms. Grover asked it, Ms. Fostick, just kind of give you an idea of my knowledge, and I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but my knowledge of curriculum and the standards. Like, don't get hung up on geography, U.S. History 1, U.S. History 2, because the way the standards are outlined, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's different strands within social studies. So there's your civic strand, there's your geography strand, economics, history, and now financial literacy. So they're calling it geography, U.S. History 2, but they're aligning to those strands and then the standard within those strands. So in other words, one of the strands for civics for 7th grade history is explain the origins and functions and structure of government with reference to the U.S. Constitution, Illinois Constitution, and other systems of government. So they teach to that standard in that strand for civics, for 7th grade, for social studies.
Yes.
Did I do good on that?
Yes.
Nice. Okay. Okay, so help me, since I got that part right, which I'm totally psyched about. Help me understand the process here then. And I thank you for the timeline, but this is kind of where my question is. So when you started doing this, you looked at the standards, right? You looked at our current scope and sequence.
Yes.
Okay, we're out of whack, right? So, okay, we need to redesign this. How can we create new scope and sequence as it aligns to the standards for each grade level, for each one of those areas that I talked about? From there, this is my big question, because this is why I think we got 138 people that showed up. When I hear you say resources for teaching, it's because maybe our teachers, because social studies wasn't their first maybe course that they're certified in, that they were looking for more instructional resources, instructional practice resources. In other words, it's one thing, the scope and sequence is the what you're teaching. The instructional practice is the how you're teaching. So my guess is that we kind of built up those instructional practices as far as the methods, strategies, and activities that they're doing now. Do we build that up better to give them those resources? Is that a lot of the work what we did? Because it seems like the scope and sequence was kind of almost the easy part. Not so much, but it was like, okay, now let's get our teachers the resources that they need to actually teach this stuff. And here's my question. Do we develop that a lot on our own, or do we kind of lean into the curriculum as well as what they have, or is it a combination of both? That's my big question, is around the instructional practices piece.
So one of the reasons why the team felt really strongly about moving forward with TCI is because there are a lot of instructional practices, resources embedded within, in a way that supports really high engagement.
But flexibility.
But flexibility. So every lesson is designed to be could be implemented. There's 3 different pathways. A teacher could literally just take it up and there's a classroom activity lesson, there's a more traditional reading and notes, and then there's a video-based activity. So there's multiple ways that are already embedded within the program, and then of course our teachers will continue to layer in additional pieces, as to meet their student needs. But that was one of the things that we really wanted in a resource, especially because our teachers don't all have a lot of time to go hunting those down.
Right.
For
Yeah.
social studies.
Give me the stuff I need to teach it so I can better prepare and I don't have to dig around and find those instructional practices or activities or whatever it is. Okay. All right. Thank you. That's wonderful. Thanks. That's all I had.
Okay, thank you. That was like the world's longest question. So one thing I was thinking while I was sitting here is you use the word inquiry a lot. So this is kind of a high level question. And I was thinking, does our audience, the ones that do watch board meetings, understand what inquiry is? So I thought maybe I would ask you to explain that concept just a little bit so they understand how we're teaching social studies.
Sure. I mean, inquiry is.
Do you want me to go?
Yeah, sure. Go
Okay.
ahead.
So I would say I'm in the planning process for looking at my next unit. And so in 8th grade social studies, we're transitioning from the Civil War and Reconstruction and into industrialization. So the inquiry unit that is proposed by TCI is actually really great and very relevant both to the industrializing nation in the 1800s and relates really nicely to today. So it's a basis of questions where students can take evidence from their classroom activities, reading, videos, however the teacher has presented those lessons and extension materials. The students collect that information and then they seek to answer those questions throughout that process. So it's something that can be done either as a summative assessment at the end of a unit, or it's something that can be done throughout the unit. And then teachers at varying levels can build either a very scaffolded structure to develop that inquiry, or they can make it a very challenging structure for your highest level students. So this next inquiry asks about equity for Native Americans as settlers move west, and how does racism and equity impact those groups? How do immigrants find their way in a changing United States as many people are moving from Europe into the United States? And then they extend that question, and how does that possibly relate to immigration today? And I know that's at the forefront of many people's minds. And then how has the Constitution adapted in order to meet the needs of citizens in a growing nation? And then on top of that, how is economy impacted in that growing nation? So these are some really big questions that we're asking our students, and then breaking it down systematically throughout that unit in order to help them build not just connections historically, but build connections currently.
I think that's very powerful, as opposed to like just memorizing dates and names or whatever that maybe was the traditional long ago, like when I was a student in high school or whatever that we learned. So thank you for that. I thought the audience might need a refresher on that. I actually was in Still Middle School this week subbing, and I was in a social studies class with 7th grade. And the teacher mentioned that they were in the pilot, and so I asked, and she had very consistent comments with what I heard tonight about the resources and the importance of having a volume of choices that they could use to adapt to the student needs and things. So she seemed very pleased with, having this new opportunity to try this new set of materials, and it was kind of interesting sitting in there listening to what was being presented and things. So I was like, wow, that worked out, the timing here. I do have a question though. So after I was thinking through that, on page 8, so if they were in the pilot and they're in 7th grade, right? Mm-hmm. Do those 7th graders, because in the old way they would get world geography and culture, how do they get that now? Do they just don't get it because of the restructure, or?
Yeah, so in the transition year, yes, they would, that group of students would not receive that. However, that transition has been a big part of our curriculum conversations, and just making sure that we are being mindful. We know what how our students are transitioning from a previous curriculum into our new. What are some of the units that might exist for a year that aren't necessarily going to be permanent, but that we want to make sure that we embed so that we provide a cohesive learning experience for our students.
Yeah. You know, it just struck me when I was thinking through that. I'm like, oh, interesting. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for all your work. I know this is always, it might look kind of that simple thing that, you know, let's go change the curriculum, but it's like massive. We're like the Queen Mary of boats or whatever, trying to get everybody to turn the same direction and adopt something new and study all the things you study prior to even trying it with people. But yeah, it was very significant to hear how many people wanted to be in the trial. So thank you so much.
A lot of the credit for that goes to the curriculum team leaders, you know, that are supporting all of, you know, their colleagues in their buildings and advocating. So shout out to them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, legislative advocacy and Board of Education update. Does anyone have any items? No? Okay, then I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Yes.
Any opposed? Okay.